You're a producer. You're pretty good at making beats. You're really good at structuring beats. But now you may be wondering, how can I make my arrangements more interesting? My name is El Marquis, musician, rapper, record producer, unashamed Christ follower, and today I'm going to give you 5 tips on how to make your arrangements more interesting.
El Marquis Productions.
Hello fellow veteran producers, welcome back to the channel. If this is your first time seeing me, I make videos that give tips to independent artists and producers all around the world. I also make tutorials specifically on Logic Pro 10. I break down my beat making and songwriting process, and occasionally I do product reviews. So if any of that interests you, I need you to do me a really quick favor. Go down, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and turn on notifications so that way you'll never miss when I post another video like this, and you'll help other people who have similar interests as you see more videos like this. Got that out the way? Bet. Let's get into the video. In my previous video, I went over some of the foundations of how to get a good mix for your beats. That may help you understand some of the topics that I'm discussing in this video, so if you haven't already, you can go click that card in the corner to go check it out. So maybe you already know how to structure your beats in a traditional song format, but maybe your beats are sounding a bit repetitive, maybe you want to make them sound a bit more interesting. So in this video, I'm going to actually give you a few tips on how to make your beat arrangements sound more interesting. So now I'm going to go switch over to Logic Pro 10, and I will give you these 5 tips on how to make your beat arrangements more interesting. All right, now we're in Logic Pro 10. I pulled up a beat that I made, and I'm going to play a few seconds of it just so you can get the vibe of the beat, and then I'll break down some of the ways that I made this beat sound more interesting. Alright, that gives you an idea of what I did with the beat. Also things I did later on in the arrangement of the beat to make it sound more interesting. So the first tip, which is pretty standard, is add changes every 4 to 8 bars. Especially in the hip hop and trap genre where things are usually pretty minimalistic, sometimes things can get a bit repetitive. For my style in particular, when I'm making beats for artists, I don't always add a lot of melodies going on at the same time just because I want to leave space for that vocalist. So something I do to make my beats sound more interesting, even if there's not a lot going on, is I'll have some elements playing in some parts of the beat, and then every 4 to 8 bars I'll take something out so that there's a noticeable change. For example, with this beat, I started off with most of the parts of the loop, then after 8 bars the chorus comes in, the 808 drops, I have some auxiliary percussion that comes in, I have another part of the loop, and this flute that I played. After another 8 bars, I drop out that 808 for a brief moment, I drop off part of that loop again, and I drop off that flute. The next 8 bars come, I put that loop back in, and then I add this mallet sound. So you get the idea. Basically what I'm doing is I'm taking out certain elements of the beat every 8 bars in the case of this beat, which gives the beat different dynamics and it brings the energy up and down. It also helps let the artist know what part of the song that they're in, whether they're in the chorus or in the verse. And you'll notice the artists do a similar thing as well. Normally they'll actually switch up their flow patterns and their rhyme schemes every 4 to 8 bars as well. So that's just something that we commonly do in this style of music. Another thing that you can do is to add drops. And what do I mean by adding drops? This is similar to the previous tip where I mentioned taking out certain elements of the beat every 4 to 8 bars. So when you're adding drops, you can do something similar where you're just dropping maybe one instrument within the beat, or maybe you're dropping the entire beat itself. So I did it really briefly in this section of the beat right here. I'll just play a few bars leading up to it so you can hear it. So that was like a really quick one. A better example of what I'm talking about specifically for this tip would be if I muted the whole beat for a really brief moment. So I'll see if I can give you an idea of what that could sound like. So that's really quick and really simple. Something that could be going on there in the context of a full song is maybe the artist said a really hard line or says something that they want to really stick out. So then by muting the beat right there, their lyrics will really pop out right there. It can stand out and grab someone's attention. I normally don't do this a lot when I'm just making the beat. This is something that maybe I would do more often if I were working with the artist hands-on, but you can still add these to your beats as well. Just make sure that when you do this, be mindful of where you put them, because let's say we add that drop somewhere that's off beat. So I'm just gonna drag these out so that they're not on beat at all. Let's say you add a drop somewhere that's not on beat, it may throw off the artist. So let's hear what this sounds like. So if you're paying attention or trying to nod your head to the beat like that, imagine if you were the artist and you're rapping like that, and then you just hear this abrupt stop that's completely random. Maybe that sounds cool to you as a producer because that's different. Maybe you're trying to do something that's not expected. But as an artist is trying to rap or sing over your beat, in that specific instance, since that drop doesn't fall on an actual beat, that's going to throw them off. It's going to make the song flow weirdly, and that's just not going to be good. So when you're adding these drops, make sure that you put them somewhere where it makes sense. Maybe if you're working on a song with a specific artist, maybe you'll just wait to add the drops after they record their verse or while they're just in the studio with you. And if you're just sending your beats off or you're just posting them on your website or on YouTube, if you do decide to add drops, just be very mindful of where you put them and don't overdo them. The next tip that I'm going to talk about is automating effects. So using automation in general can help bring different dynamics into your beats. And one thing that I like to do with automation is automating certain effects to come in certain parts of the beat and then take them right back out. So in this beat in particular, I pulled up this plugin called Tremolator. It's from Soundtoys. And then in order to make this part of the beat stand out, what I did was I automated it to briefly turn on for the first 2 bars of this section, and then it just turns right back off. So I'll show you what that sounds like leading up to it and then what it sounds like right after. So if you heard that, the tremolator, which is pretty much adding a tremolo effect, it briefly kicks in right there and then it comes right back out. Just so it adds something really quick to that section of the beat to make it sound more interesting and stand out. And I use that effect in other parts of the beat as well. This part briefly in the verse and even this part in the outro. And you can do that with pretty much any effect that you can think of, whether it's that tremolo effect. What I hear very often from other people is using different filters. You can do that with a flanger. You can do that with delays and reverbs. You can do that with pretty much any effect that you can think of. And just like with adding drops, there's also something that you don't want to overdo. It may be fun to play around with different effects and get different sounds, and maybe you want to go for something really different. But if you're making beats specifically for artists, when you add in these cool little effects and little drops, be mindful of where you use them and make sure that you're not overdoing it. Make sure that you're putting them in places that's not going to throw off that artist. The next tip, which is honestly a pretty simple thing to do, is to drop down your loop or your melodies down or up an octave. So if you happen to have a beat similar to this where you have the loop playing throughout most of the beat, a really quick and easy way to make it sound different is just by dropping it down an octave. So as you can see here in this last part of the verse leading up to the chorus, if you pay attention to these numbers right here, you can see in these last 8 bars leading up to the chorus, I actually dropped this loop down an octave. It's really easy to do that. So if you didn't change the key of your loop just to start with, all you have to do is just click on it, click over here where it says transpose, and then you would drag that down to 12 because that's an octave lower, or you would do it plus 12, which is an octave higher. In this case, since I already transposed the loop, you just have to do a little bit of math just to get it right, or just use your ear. So in the case of this beat in particular, since I transposed the loop up plus 5, the math for that would be negative 12 plus 5. In this case, that would be negative 7. So if you want to transpose it down an octave and you transpose the original loop up, the formula for that would be negative 12 plus whatever number you see over here that you transposed it up. If you wanted to transpose this up an octave, it would be 5 plus 12. The math for it isn't super complicated, and you also can just use your ear. So here's what this sounds like leading up to this part. And honestly, this may be one of the easiest things to do. This is something that I find myself doing a lot in beats where I don't have a lot going on. So let's say, for example, I didn't have these additional instruments playing and it was just this loop. I would probably be dropping it down or putting it up an octave to make it sound different, to make it sound similar to as if you were changing the chord progression or adding in another melody. It's just bringing the tone down, it's bringing the energy down a little bit, and then I have it going back up to where it originally was, back in the chorus, to bring that energy back up. So transposing your loop, your sample, your main melodies down or up an octave at certain parts of the beat is a super easy, super quick way to make your arrangements sound more interesting. And the last tip that we'll go over today is spreading out your different melodies. So in this beat in particular, I have a few different chords and melodies going on. So the loop itself has 4 different layers in it, and thankfully I had the track outs to the loop, so I had full control over what I wanted to do with the different layers within the loop itself. And then I added on a flute, some mallets, and some keys. So instead of having all those different parts play at the same time, I just spread them out all across the beat. So for example, this flute it only plays in the chorus. In this part of the verse, I have these mouths playing, and they only play in this part of the verse. In these last 8 bars of the verse leading up to the chorus, I only have these keys playing. These keys play in that section, and they don't play anywhere else within the beat. Whenever you're making beats specifically for artists, you always want to keep them in mind. You want to keep their vocals in mind. When you have too many instruments playing at the same time, that takes away space for them to lay down what's arguably the most important instrument within the song, and that's the vocals. So by not having all of them play at the same time, first of all, you're leaving space for the artist. Second of all, in terms of the arrangement of the beat, you have multiple different melodies coming in different parts of the beat, so then it just feels less repetitive. So this tip ties into the first one, where if you're adding in changes every 4 to 8 bars, you could add one of these melodies in for 8 bars and then take it out and add a different one. So while you're just in the process of making the beat, add in different melodies, add in different chords, add in as many as you can think of, and then what I would recommend is, rather than having them play all at the same time all throughout the beat, just spread them out. The goal you should have in mind is making your beat sound more interesting, and then not having all these melodies take up all the space where the artist should be. So these are just 5 different ways to make your beat arrangement sound more interesting. Of course, there are different things that you can do. What I always recommend is try these out for yourself, experiment, combine all these tips together, and just experiment, be creative, have fun. And by using these tips, you'll make your beat sound less like a loop and more like a song, and it will help inspire the artist to create the best song possible. And one thing that I want to emphasize is, don't overdo the tips that I discussed. If you want to add effects, definitely do it, but don't add it at the expense of it being a bit extra and then throwing off the artist when they're trying to write to the beat. Same thing with adding drops. If you're adding drops to the beat before you actually work with the artist, make sure that you're adding them in places where it makes sense, where it's not going to throw them off. Make sure it's actually on a beat that makes sense. And overall, just keep the artist in mind whenever you're making the beat and whenever you're arranging it. So now you just learned 5 tips to make your beat arrangements sound more interesting. Thank you for watching this video. If you like what you've seen today, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications so you know whenever I upload new videos. Also, be sure to visit my website, lmarquisproductions.com, where you'll be able to check out my music, my beats, my sample kits, my merchandise, and my mixing, mastering, and consulting services. If you go to lmarquisproductions.com, I actually have a free loop kit available on there right now, and I'll leave a link in the description if you'd like to check it out. And now go down in the comment section below and let me know, what are some other ways to make your beat arrangements sound more interesting. My name is L Marquis Productions. God bless.